It's getting close to the age where you start.
Rotary, am I on? There we go. Good morning. Let's start with all right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test and the things we think, say, and do. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, we're going to start with a song this morning. George and Russ are going to introduce, and Gail are going to be singing with all of you, America the Beautiful.
Yep.
Brock is going to get the words up eventually here. There we go. Yeah, America the Beautiful.
America the Beautiful. America, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the better song. Okay.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains majesty above the fruit and plain. America, God His grace on thee, and crown thy good with fatherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond thy years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you all. All right. We have a lot of visiting guests today. Let's start with the guests who are online. Brock, can you let us know who we have online today?
Okay, we have got a lot of guests online, so I'm going to go through and say your name. When I say your name, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself, and I'm just going to go top to bottom on my list here. I see Bruce Karstad.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Bruce Karstad. I'm with the American Swedish Institute. I'm a guest of Russ Michalitz.
Excellent. We have our old friend Tim Houlihan.
Thanks, Brock. I'm Tim Houlihan. I'm a guest of Kurt Nelson's, and I'm a podcaster as well as a behavioral science consultant.
We have Andrew Ramirez, who's a member of the Minneapolis Uptown Rotary.
Andrew Ramirez here. I also work on DEI for the district action team on DEI, and working on starting the Minnesota Pride Rotary Club. And I am a sustainability consultant at Cherrywood Partners.
Hey, Brock, can we see him on the screen?
Oh, yeah, we can do that. Okay. We have Brandon Canez.
I'm Brandon Canez. I'm with Be The Match. I'm a technical trainer, and I am a guest of Matthew Prediger.
We have one from my list.
Who's with Be The Match?
Linda Jury with us this morning.
Good morning. I'm still in my pajamas. That's why I'm not doing video. I'm a guest of Scott Benson, and my claim to fame is I'm his next door neighbor.
We have Margaret Anderson Kelleher. Commissioner Kelleher is online with us.
Well, good morning, everyone. Margaret Anderson Kelleher, still the Commissioner of Transportation, but I am coming over to the City of Lakes to be the Public Works Director. Very excited about this move, and I'm a guest of Scott Benson this morning.
We have Misha Hartke this morning.
Hey, good morning. Misha Hartke. I'm a guest of Lisa Moncrief. I work in finance at Emerson and a soon-to-be ambassador for Braver Angels, the organization that presented last week.
Excellent. And I think I said everybody, but if I missed you, please feel free to come off mute and introduce yourself.
I think Bill Jackson has some guests.
Oh, that's right. Bill
Yeah.
Jackson.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I have my wife Shirley with me. She can say a few words.
Yeah, I'm a retired school counselor, and I spend my time as an introduction leader with Landmark, and I'm also kind of the person Bill talks to when he isn't busy with water project for Rotary or anything else with Rotary.
Did we miss anyone else online?
All right, and we have a lot of guests here too. I'm going to start. My husband, Joe Andrews, is here. Joe, over there, if you want to say hello.
Hello, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Just wrapped up some communications work with the marketing team here, and it's a pleasure to be here in person.
And you're going to want to take the mic. The next one, our next guest is Andrea Jeske Mausitz. She is another guest of mine. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you for having me again. Yeah, Andrea. And I'm a CPA here in the city.
Yay. All right. Next, we have Nancy Showquist is here. Nancy, it's nice to see you again.
It's true. My name is Nancy Showquist. I live in Uptown and I'm committed to restoring Uptown.
Yay. We have the Cosgrins. Kathy and Chuck Cosgrin are here with us today.
My parents, Kathy and Chuck Cosgrin, are here as guests. And I don't know, you want to say anything?
I'm happy to be here. We recently moved downtown, so it's wonderful to be in your new space too.
It's good to have you here. Welcome. Council member Kevin Reich is with us. Former council member Kevin Reich is with us today. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. And I'm here on the guest of John Bonemide, and I'm currently the executive director of the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, and deeply appreciative of all the things you've done for Northeast.
Thank you very much. Also, Steve Morris has a guest. Patty, I can't read your last name. I'm sorry, Patty, you're going to have to fill it in for me. Sorry.
You wouldn't be the first. It's Patty Sifferly. Steve graciously invited me. I live in St. Paul and I work from home, but I'm an employment investigator and mediator with Mendota Consultants.
Wonderful. Welcome, Patty. Nice to have you here. Tom Bird is back with us today. Tom, you want to say hello and tell us how things are going with everything you're doing?
Yes. Hi, Tom Bird. Good to be back. I work at the Advocates for Human Rights in their Refugee and Immigrant Program, and I'm a one meeting a month member now, but still on the guest list. So great to be back here. Excited for Mayor Frey.
Great. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. Let's welcome all of our guests today. Keep bringing those guest people. It's so good to see you all. And I'm particularly glad all of you who could join us in person on this very cold day. Good to see you all here as well. All right. We could do a quick round of happy bugs, I think, this morning. Who's happy this morning? Anybody have happy bugs? Jim.
Well, I'm happy for, as many of you know, getting back home after a wonderful ski trip with many of our Rotary colleagues, including Doug Schmidt. And if one thing you can assure with, if he's around, we had fun. So it will be an annual event for those of you that have even thought about skiing in Big Sky. We'll be doing it again in January of 23. So I'm happy for the great fun we had.
Very good. Yes.
Here's some money.
And yeah, where's your money? There we go. We need that money. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Happy bugs.
Okay, so some of you know I live with someone who doesn't enjoy winter because he moved here from Spain, and I love winter. And so I just want to say, if you're not sure about the cold in winter, go to Theodore Worth. There's a sledding hill. There's kids having a great time. There's people cross-country skiing. There are bonfires. There's a sauna club. There's all kinds of fun stuff, and you can really enjoy Minnesota winter.
Perfect. Anybody else happy? Oh, we got happy people all over today.
I'm going to stay seated. I just am happy to have breakfast here with this table of good friends. Known David for a long time. I've known Keith and Nancy for a long time, and I'm getting to know Tom. And of course, Kevin Reich was a guy I'm very proud of.
Thank you so much. All right, more happy folks. Mark. Oh, Jean.
Money?
Yep.
I'm also happy for all the visitors. It's so great to have all of you here today and those of you online. Great to see you. And I'm happy because I'm heading out Sunday to go to Key West for a week.
Fabulous. I wish I were joining you. Mark.
Thanks. Just a few bucks to echo Jim Eaton's comments. We had a great ski trip in Big Sky, and I hope we can make that an annual thing. He's a lovely host. So, and it's nice to be back from kind of a long winter break. So
good to have you back. Russ.
Yeah, we spent 4 days in Palm Springs, warmed up a little bit with the whole family. That was fun. I want to particularly thank Bruce Karstead for joining, good friend from the American Swedish Institute. Fika is open for business, so go there and buy a nice lunch. And Margaret Anderson Keller, her regular friend of ours and a Gustie. So there we go.
All right. Yes, we have enough Gusties, but we can always use more. Okay. I'm going to introduce our day chair today. Welcome, Jean. Jean Johnson has been a member of City of Lakes Rotary since 2015. She started her Rotary career in 2010 in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then spent 3 years at the Uptown Club, where her husband Guy is still a member, before arriving at the best Rotary club in the world, of course, City of Lakes Rotary. And thanks for being introduced by Bob Baker and Hugh Pruitt. Jean is a leadership coach specializing in supporting nonprofit leaders, helping navigate professional transitions and challenges. She works one-on-one with leaders throughout the U.S. and also facilitates peer training groups and nonprofit leaders here in Minneapolis. In her early coaching days, she worked with clients in almost every sector, from healthcare, retail, government, and consulting, among many others. Prior to becoming a coach, Jean led a small business development team for the state of Michigan and also consulted one-on-one with individuals seeking to start and grow their business. Jean has a BA in psychology from the University of Kentucky and an MBA from the University of Minnesota and a certificate in executive coaching from Georgetown University. Go Hoyas. She is an animal lover, reader, walker, and loves spending time on Sanibel Island in the cold months. As you probably noticed, she's enormously proud of her 2 grown kids, Adele, the communications manager at a large Chicago nonprofit, and Tess, a new veterinarian currently practicing emergency medicine in Portland, Oregon. Jean, thank you so much. Of course, Jean is our membership chair as well. So Jean, thanks for being our day chair today.
Well, the first thing I want to do is say thank you to Julie Grape, who was kind enough to be taking a tour to Antarctica right now. So she left it to me to get to introduce the mayor. So thank you, Julie. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey grew up in Northern Virginia, the son of professional ballet dancers, just like Max Kepler. So someday maybe you'll get to be a professional baseball player. You can trade roles or something. He attended the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia on a track scholarship. After graduating with a degree in government, he began running professionally, I can't even imagine, while attending law school at Villanova University in Philadelphia. When he came to Minneapolis to run the Twin Cities Marathon, he fell in love with the city and moved here the day after graduation. As an employment and civil rights attorney, Jacob became an active community organizer. In 2011, he led efforts to launch the Big Gay Race,
which raised over $250,000 to help defeat the proposed Minnesota constitutional amendment defining marriage between a man and a woman. He also became involved in advocacy for those experiencing homelessness, helping tenants who lost their homes in North Minneapolis. In 2012, the city of Minneapolis awarded its inaugural Martin Luther King Jr. Award to Jacob for his civil rights work. He successfully ran to represent the 3rd Ward on the city council in 2013. And then in 2017, he was elected mayor for the first time. Jacob has championed an agenda centered on increasing access to affordable housing throughout the city, strengthening community police relations, and fueling economic growth through inclusive policies. He has successfully secured record-setting investments for the city's affordable housing work. Jacob has worked with the police department to shift the department's culture, enhance accountability, and prioritize officer wellness. His focus on improving public safety includes strengthening the police department's body camera policy and overhauling the department's use of force policy. He worked with the city council to establish 7 new cultural districts, which are areas prioritized for investment. To help ensure more entrepreneurs of color have a fair shot at owning their property, he created a first-of-its-kind commercial property development fund to target resources to neighborhoods that have historically experienced disinvestment. And as you may know, he has recently been elected to a 2nd term. Jacob lives on the east side of Minneapolis with his wife, Sarah Clark, who practices government relations with a focus on early childhood education. They have a 1-year-old daughter. So please help join me in welcoming Mayor Jacob Frey.
Thank you so much, Jean, for having us. And I'm really honored to be here. Thank you to the entire Rotary Club. I'm already seeing some friends right off the bat in the room here. We've got former council member Kevin Reich right here. We've got David Wheeler. I saw Scott Benson a minute ago. And so I feel right at home. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting someone else in the room that I haven't seen quite yet. But I've been here to visit with the Rotary Club several times already. The first time, I believe, was in my first year of service as mayor. And I had a phenomenal time then. No doubt I will have a wonderful time yet again. Generally, I don't like to draw on too long. I like this to be a little bit more of a conversation. Jean read my entire biography. And so you're very familiar with who I am and where I've been. And let's be real, we have been through a very difficult couple of years here in the city of Minneapolis and really nationwide. But I think we've experienced the depths of COVID-19 and hundreds of years in the making reckoning around racial justice more acutely perhaps here than anywhere else. And for good reason. We have a whole lot of work to do. The aspects that I want to focus on in terms of policy largely haven't changed. Jean mentioned affordable housing, which has always been a passion of mine. Economic inclusion, making sure that we're centering our Black and Brown communities, not just as key decision makers at the table, but also key beneficiaries in the process. And safety and accountability, which I believe are intrinsically linked. These 3 items have always been at the core of our agenda. That being said, the urgency of these matters have substantially changed. The fault lines of inequities are always there, but they get particularly exposed when you go through something like a global pandemic. And I'll take you back to March of 2020. In March of 2020, very beginning, a couple of years ago, I remember sitting at my conference table in City Hall, and I was about to sign an emergency declaration to take quick authority over matters related to a global pandemic. It was the first emergency declaration that had been signed in perhaps many terms. And I had a pen in one hand, and in the other hand, I had a cell phone, and I was FaceTiming with my wife, Sarah, who was in the hospital getting an ultrasound. And she was pointing the camera at the screen so I could see, Frida, who was at the time unborn. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the most important thing in my professional life in one hand, probably that I'll ever do. And then the most important thing in my entire life in the other. And I thought that this was the moment. This was the big moment. And then the global pandemic got worse. George Floyd was murdered. Substantial unrest, an economic downturn, a city budget crisis that required us to put out about 3 or 4 budgets in the time that we would normally put out 1 or 2. And both of these individuals know that very well. And it has been one heck of a 1.5 to 2 years here. But through it all, I've gained this immense belief in the people of our city, in our collective desire to do things differently, to get back not just to what was and has been the old normal, but to blow by that through to something transformational. I'll tell you, I've learned a lot. And you use those lessons to be a better mayor and hopefully a better person, and then you chart a course from there. And so I'm honored to be able to serve here in Minneapolis through another term. I'm honored to be here at the Women's Club, which has been a location, a destination of celebration during many moments past that I can think of. And I'm honored really to go hand in hand with the community around some of the most toughest and critical aspects that we need to deal with. And I'll talk just briefly about a couple of them. And then I figure I'll open it up to questions that you may have, because the back and forth is always a little bit more enlightening than me just standing on here and drawing on. The priority right now in the immediacy is safety. Everyone in every single neighborhood deserves to feel safe. Safe on their way to school, safe in their backyard, safe sending their kids out to jump on a trampoline. And we have seen a substantial uptick in violence. Now that uptick, we've seen it nationwide, but it doesn't make anybody feel better to say, well, don't worry about it. Other cities are experiencing the same thing. We live here. I'm the mayor here. We raise our kids here. And it's on us to make sure that that basic and foundational element of safety is there. And in terms of the way to get to true safety, we've had this pendulum that has been swinging back violently to the left and to the right, up and down. You got defund and abolish the police on one side, which is crazy. You got an armed, militarized, and occupying force on the other side, which is crazy. And people need to understand that the complexities of this work are just that. They are complex. You need to have the willingness to dig in, to understand the detail of each one of these scenarios that we are confronting, whether it's gun violence, carjackings, deep-seated inequities, which yes, can be a cause of crime. And yes, there are hundreds of causes of crime. People say, well, what's the reason for the uptick? Well, there's not just one. It is a global pandemic. It's the economic downturn. It's a lack of job security. It's the fact that we have distance learning right now. There's not a lot of recreational activities for kids to do anything. It's a whole host of different issues that ultimately contribute to the state that we're in. And as mayor, you don't have the ability just to talk about the long-term issues that we need to live up to. Housing, job insecurity, all the things I just discussed. We need to focus on that, yes. And we also have an obligation to deal with the difficult dynamics of serious crime now. That's the job that you have working in local government, and that's the job that I have as mayor, which means you need to provide an honesty of approach, which of course means all of these upstream solutions, and it also means you need police. You need to work with your police department. You need to ensure both accountability and that officers have the tools that they need in order to succeed. I'm happy to get into more of what that looks like, but that has to be the top priority of everything that we're doing right now, because it is a foundational element on which everything else must be built. People need to feel safe and be safe. Around economic inclusion, we are working towards true recovery in our city. And it is more than a little bit of a pain in the neck when you try to open and then a surge of Omicron or the Delta variant or whatever the next thing is going to be called happens. It is more than a little bit frustrating when you're trying to get things back online, but you also have to keep people alive. It's a tough dynamic to balance, but it is something that I think we are weathering. And by the way, I believe we are nearing the end of the tunnel right now. I'll be real with you. I don't know what I am talking about with respect to epidemiology, but I listen to people that do. We have experts and epidemiologists. We have doctors, health professionals that I consult on a daily basis that provide analysis on the data, that provide a sense of direction as to where we need to go. And, you know, to give you a little bit of optimism, what they are very clearly telling us is that we could very well be at the end of this tunnel. The Omicron virus or variant is extremely contagious. Pretty much everybody will be exposed to it in some way, shape, or form. But it's also not as strong. It's a relatively weak virus, and to the extent we can have people see general exposure, and then we're able to develop some form of immunity, both through vaccines as well as natural, then I think that could be kind of the end ticket before we ultimately proceed to the next step. And by the way, get vaccinated. If you haven't yet, get vaccinated. If not for yourself, if you're not worried about your own health, for the sake of others. Because here's the dynamic we're looking at right now. Neither the vaccine nor masks will stop the spread. There's this, I'm for both of those things, by the way, but neither one of them will stop the people from ultimately catching it. What they will do is prevent the peak from going high enough at a critical juncture through which ICU beds will overflow. What it helps us to do is alleviate the pressures on our hospital systems so that when someone in this room tragically gets into a car accident, they are able to go to an ICU and get care that they need, rather than having them all be filled up and overflowing. So I've deviated a little bit from the talk of recovery, but the recovery is getting through COVID. Recovery is getting back to work. Recovery is opening up our city again. And recovery is remembering all the extraordinary things that we love about this place. Right? And it's really, really, really easy to forget all the wonderful things that we love when you've been sitting on your couch for a year and a half watching Netflix. I mean, get out to the women's club. Get out to your favorite local dive bar. Go do things. We're at the point now where we live in an extraordinary place, and whether you love the farmer's market or you just want to remember the crack of the bat over there at Target Field, it's time to come back. It is time to come back. And I'm saying that now, do all the things, take all the precautions. Absolutely. The city is an extraordinary place. It's time to remember it. It's time to get back to business again. And I mean business as broadly speaking as possible. The final issue is housing, but rather than kind of go into depth on that, because as Kevin well knows, I could talk about housing for 45 minutes. I figure now would just be a great time to, open it up to questions about where we've been, where we're going, literally anything at all. I would love to hear from you. Again, I'm honored to be in the presence of extraordinary Rotarians. You have such a long history of service and commitment to the community in which you live and you work. It's an honor to be in this room with all of you. So thank you so much, and I'll open it up to any questions you might have. Please. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What are some of the solutions to the homelessness and the housing issues that maybe we as a Rotary Club might want to engage in.
So it's an excellent question. What are some of the solutions around housing and homelessness? First, we have a dearth of very low income housing in this city. Now, it's not for lack of effort, because through this last term with Kevin and David, we invested record amounts, in fact, about 3 times the previous record amount of funding in affordable housing, with a focus on deeply affordable, low-income housing. Let me tell you what I mean by that, because a lot of people get confused. So the standard definition for what constitutes affordable housing is housing that would be affordable to someone that is at 60% of the area median income and below. So you take the median income, you take 60% of that, that's the top level of affordability, and then it goes down. Now, traditionally speaking, we've had a lot of housing at the 50 and 60% level, which is called workforce housing. What we've been missing is that deeply affordable housing at 30% of AMI, area median income, that allows people who are experiencing homelessness to have that next rung on the ladder and pull themselves out. So we've made a really deliberate focus on that subset, the 30% of AMI. Produced about 5 to 7 times the amount of deeply affordable housing than we did before. Is it enough? No, it's not. We still need more. Because if we don't provide the next rung on the ladder for people to pull themselves out of homelessness, then we're perpetually keeping people as homeless. That's a reality. And so I believe that we serve our city better. We serve people experiencing homelessness better. We also serve our bottom line better when we give people the homes that they need. It costs about 3 times as much to have a person cycling through poverty and hospital stays and sometimes jail than it does just to get them a home. So I think we have that obligation. The other piece, which is inherent, which has been extremely related to the homeless crisis that we now see, especially with unsheltered homelessness, is addiction. Severe addiction. You know, we've had encampments that have popped up around our city. Minneapolis is by no means unique. But when you talk to people who are experiencing homelessness, why they want to be out in a homeless encampment, first I'll tell you, it's not due to a lack of shelter. We have shelter of beds available right now. There are shelter beds available right now. I can't tell you how many people come up to me, we'll build more shelter. That ain't it. There are 3 general reasons why people experiencing homelessness don't want to be in the shelter. One is safety, a concern for one's safety in the shelters. The second is a desire to be with more than one person in your community or in your family, which is occasionally tough to do. And then third piece, and this is probably the most prevalent, is addiction, severe addiction. And the kind of drugs that are out there now between opioids and fentanyl, I mean, they take hold of your entire being and your entire life like nothing we've seen. I mean, it is incredible. And, you know, we have an obligation, I think, to both, you know, provide gentle but firm compassion, you know, to get people into homes, of course, but to make very clear that, you know, there is an obligation to get treatment and to accept care. And, you know, just like any of you would treat a family member that was suffering from addiction, it needs to be gentle but firm care. That's what we need to be moving towards right now. And so I think there's a number of different ways that you can get involved. I'd be happy to provide you with information about all the different entities that you can volunteer at or donate to. There are quite a few. But we're moving in the right direction right now. And the one of the things that I would call out is Avivo. And I know, you know, this is something that council members here worked incredibly hard on. And Avivo is it's a new shelter in near North Minneapolis or far North Loop, whatever you want to call it. And it's an indoor village where everybody gets a little tiny home. Now, they're small, but when you have the ability to walk into a place and shut the door, take a deep breath, and, you know, you've got your own nightstand next to you, you got a book or a glass of water, just the little things that make you, you. That helps to ground people and provides a foundation from which they can take the next step that you don't necessarily get when you don't even know which bed you're going to sleep in the following night, or if you're going to get one. So that's a really important model, and already it's being replicated in other areas around the state.
We do have a question online. Greg Beckstrom asks, I live in Minneapolis and I raised my kids here. They just finished college and they are struggling with reasons to stay here. What hope can you give people that Minneapolis will be a safe, welcoming, and dynamic place to live, work, play, and raise a family?
Well, thank you for the question. That question is an excellent one. It's also so broad that it almost calls for another stump speech, and so I'll just be frank. I believe in this city. I believe in the people that are here. I believe that we've made some necessary changes also in our city government, both in terms of elected leadership and in terms of the government structure itself that allows us to operate more efficiently and quickly than we did before. Now, to be clear, there is no magic wand that we can suddenly wave and all of these issues and problems are just going to get better. There is none. And so I'm not going to overpromise here and underdeliver. But what I will say is that, this is not just Minneapolis that is experiencing this difficulty. It's the entire country right now. And believe it or not, we are better poised to come out of this than most every other similarly situated city throughout the nation. We've got the intellectual and educated workforce. We have a heap of jobs that are ready to be filled. We have a dynamic and beautiful cultural scene here. We've got the assets that are necessary for us to rise in the right way. And it's going to happen. Safety, I could talk about that for quite a long time because that absolutely has to be a foundational building block to get there. And when people don't feel safe, the rest of the stuff can't take place to begin with. One right there, and then we'll go over here.
Just wanted to mention, I'm intimately connected to the Vivo Village, and what you didn't mention is so critically important that all the services, each person, each resident has a case manager. And all the services for potential recovery, given addiction, mental health conditions are on site. So there is the resources to break the systemic aspects that leads people into this chronic homelessness condition. That's what truly adds to the uniqueness and the possibility that this could truly be one of the many critical answers to systemic homelessness. And that it's really amazing. Our church has given a major grant, so I'm intimately involved.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree with you more.
So I'm wondering if the city has a plan to save some of these important areas like Uptown, because the lack of parking and the new construction is killing the commercial aspect. We see that on Hennepin. We're kind of worried about the 2040 because there's no parking requirements. So how are we going to do this to revive these areas?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. First, I will say that people have pronounced Uptown as dead about 30 times over the last 30 years. I actually had my staff go back and look at kind of from a historical reference and check out how many different times people have said Uptown is awful, it's not what it used to be. And every 5 years, they say that 5 years ago was the best time, or 20 years ago was the best time. And so first I'll say, Uptown is alive. Is Uptown, well and flourishing? No, there's nowhere in major city in the entire country that is flourishing at the moment. And that's not exclusively because of a lack of parking. It's because of a global pandemic. Now, a city is an ecosystem. And an ecosystem needs to account for all of the different facets of life. It needs to account for a multimodal transportation system because some people want to get from point A to point B using different mechanisms. Some people want to use bus. Some people walk. Some people want to use cars. Some people need to use cars because they're either elderly or they're disabled and they need to be able to park, yes, park, within a certain vicinity of wherever it is that they are going to patron. Parking is an aspect. It's not something that you can ignore. And simultaneously, like we're gonna have this ongoing push and pull between moving towards a more resilient and climate-friendly city and the realities that people do get around in a car and it's really cold in Minneapolis. These are just kind of realities that we need to understand and we need to account for. And, I used to hate questions about parking. I used to, past tense. I love getting the questions about parking right now. I'll tell you, for the sole reason of when I'm getting yelled at about parking, it means that things are getting better again. It means that people are out and about. It means that there's demand for the services in the city. And it means that the really, not that parking isn't critical, but the really critical, like life-threatening stuff that we've been dealing with for 2 years is beginning to subside in some form. And so I hear the concern. I hear you loud and clear. And with all of this stuff, you need to strike a balance. You need to listen to people. And I believe not just in engagement, but honest engagement, which means that you're not haven't made a decision already before you've asked. And so, with respect to all these issues, we are working through them. I think there's always, through additional debate and argument, I think you can always find a right route forward.
Anna Kostrin, I'm a member of Downtown Council as well, so thank you for your partnership there. But wanted to ask, with that in mind, and thinking of Rotary, bunch of active people, service-oriented, we've done some work with Lake Street Council and others, but do you have any comments about how we can strengthen some of those partnerships and leverage the different work that different organizations are trying to do, whether it's Rotary, Downtown Council, and others?
Well, first off, thank you so much for your work at the Downtown Council. You all have been going through the thick of it as well. And downtown, first, let me say this, downtown will come back in a big way. People I've heard, well, just like Uptown, I've heard people say, well, downtown is dead, it ain't come back. No. Downtown is coming back. And in fact, our occupancy rates, again, are higher right now than cities that are similarly situated. Does that mean that they're where they should be or where we want them? Not even close, but they're coming back. Second, I'll say this about downtown broadly as well as commercial space. We will climb dramatically in occupancy over this next year. I don't believe, however, that it'll get back to the 100% figures that we saw pre-pandemic. I'm just going to make this figure up right now, but let's say we get to 85 or 90%. Let's say we get to 85%. There will be a transition of a certain percentage of the space. And whether that's moving towards more of a residential orientation or that's allowing for collaborative space that allows for multiple different businesses to be operating simultaneously, I do think a transition will inevitably happen. And we as a city have to also be flexible in allowing different uses for the different space that has just changed. You asked about collaboration. Rebecca, would you give me a glass of water real quick? You asked about collaboration. Here's one of the things that I think is an opportunity. For the first time, maybe ever, you have businesses that are coming back online at virtually the same time. Thank you. So under a normal situation, you have a new entrepreneur running with a great idea, opens up a restaurant or a marketing firm or whatever. They're the new ones on the block. There's somebody else that's been there for 3 years, somebody else that's been there for 25 or 50 years. There are businesses that are all over the map, and they're all kind of glued in to what they are doing in that moment. The difference now is that when everybody is coming back online or starting a business for the first time, it's happening within the span of the same several months. And when that happens, there's a renewed sense of collaboration that you wouldn't otherwise get. The brewery starts a partnership with the boutique starts working with the flower shop starts talking to the marketing firm. And it's a symbiosis that you don't normally have. And so what I would say is find that interconnectivity, help create that interconnectivity for those businesses that are coming back online now, because this is an opportunity we hopefully will never get again. But we have right now. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate all of you. I hope I get invited back again, both to the Rotary Club as well as to the Women's Club. It's just such an honor. It's good to see all of you, and I look forward to partnering in the days ahead. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
One of them, each week we have our speakers sign a book that we then give to Way to Grow. So the kids at Way to Grow then have a book of their own signed by a city leader. So I'll give you a pen so you can sign a book that we will then donate to Way to Grow. And we also have a bookmark that you can keep, which is from one of our projects in Haiti. So thank you so much for being here.
Mayor Frey, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really do appreciate it. All right, next week we have Shauna Nelson-Wills from the talking about transformational housing and growth for women and families. So make sure you're back with us next week. I want to thank our day chair, Jean Johnson. George, thank you so much for the song this morning. It was really good to see all of you who were here today. Of course, thank you, Brock and Ross, for all you're doing with the tech on the tech side, which is always a fun thing for us to do. Thank you to the mayor's staff and to the mayor for being with us today. All of you have a great Rotary week.